Yeah, Nancy, I think we first met, Nancy of NASA, right? Yeah. We first met at the Amateur Radio International Space Station program. I'll get out of the way of the speakers so the acoustics aren't so bad. Students of systems engineering, you can work out the... Right. The Case Club, Christina had been working with Nancy for a good long time.
Yeah. Actually, she was working with Bob Romanowski, and that's how we met.
But we met when you invited the Case Amateur Radio Club through Christina to participate in the Girl Scouts scheduled amateur radio through the International Space Station program. And I won't say much more about it than that was a total treat of a day out in rural Ohio at the Girl Scout camp. And I look forward to hearing your talk. Welcome to the Case campus.
All right, thank you. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. My name is Nancy Rebel Hall. My call is KC4IYD. I actually got licensed when I was in college in Florida. And then at the time, they let you keep your call. So as I moved up to 8 land, I just kept the 4 call, which is entertaining when I am on the radio, because they hear me, and you probably hear my New England accent. I grew up in New York. So, yeah. Yeah. So they hear a 4 call, they're turning the beam south. I'm like, oh, no, I'm up north. So they're thinking I'm in New York. I'm like, no, I'm in Ohio. So it's all sorts of fun. But what I'm going to talk to you about is ARISS, which stands for Amateur Radio, and ISS, and how talking to the astronauts via ham radio and how it inspires students. Basically, what is ARISS? It's a program designed to basically motivate students worldwide to pursue careers in STEM through amateur radio communication opportunities with the ISS on-orbit crew. ARISS actually has its history going back to shuttle operations. Back then it was called SAREX, Space Amateur Radio Experiment. And then when we started going exclusively to the station, it became ARISS. It's managed by an international consortium of amateur radio organization and space agencies. Here in the U.S., it's AMSAT and NASA among the space agencies. And in 2017, the Space Communication and Spectrum Management Office, an organization at NASA, they teamed up with the NASA Glen Amateur Radio Club and Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio and submitted a proposal to ARISS. And in June, and a few months later, they were actually selected to make a contact. So what I'm going to do now is just kind of go through the application process, what we did to get set up, and I also have some pictures of the event. So basically, when you're applying for an ARISS application, there's 2 different types of ways you can communicate with the station astronauts. One is what we call a direct contact, and with that, you actually have a radio link. You have an amateur radio station set up at the school or the location of the organization, and you basically communicate with the amateur station on the space station, basically tracking the station as it goes overhead. The other type of contact is called telebridge. With that one, there's a dedicated amateur radio ground station. They're actually located across the world, and they establish a radio link with the station, and then they use voice communications to patch the students and the astronauts via regular telephone lines. So one of the things we emphasize with the students is, even though you're talking over the telephone lines, the signal is still using amateur radio. One of the reasons you may want to use the telebridge is if it's in a location that's just not conducive to having antennas, or if you're not sure when the contact's going to take place. There's a variety of reasons, or you can't find an amateur radio club in the area, which I don't think that's ever a reason. But when you do the application, you pick one of the others, one of the 2. And then there's 2 parts to the application. Part A, and both direct and telebridge does it, is the contact information. The majority of these are done with schools either contacting a club. In this case, it was a little different. We had an organization that was looking for an entity to do this. One of my friends at work approached me and said, hey, do you know of a school we'd like to do an ARISS contact? And it was relatively a short time to get the application going. And since I'm a Girl Scout leader and I do a lot of stuff with Girl Scouts, that's how the idea, hey, let's get Girl Scouts involved, came about. So contact information, they want the educational contact organization partner. In one case, we had a school partner with several other schools, and then the amateur radio. The second part of the application process is the schedule plan. In other words, what day time is preferred for you throughout the school year. Are weekend, holidays, nights a problem? For schools, they understand it's an issue. Or is there a specific event that that's occurring over, say, a 1 or 2 week period you want to do? That's another example of where they would do a telebridge, where if there's a specific location or specific time, you need it. The educational plan, and I'll actually get into this a little detail, and this is how are you going to utilize the ARISS contact to enrich STEM activities or to support educational objectives? That's one of the things the ARISS program looks at. The contact is only 10 minutes, but they want you to see how you're going to implement this into the schools. Same thing with the media plan. How are you going to engage your community? How are you going to get the kids excited, the community excited, everyone else for what basically is a 10-minute contact, but you want to, get them excited about everything that's involved. The other thing is this program is not intended to incur cost burden to the school. In other words, they're relying on the ham community to provide the amateur radio equipment, and you'll see in a little bit when the ham club was in the process of getting it. We were lucky in that the organization we're working with was able to fund things, but with some of our previous contacts, we basically were able to get the equipment, no problem. Now, when you're doing direct only, there's a second part to it. Going back to the first part, we submitted our applications in June, and about 2 months later, around August, we were told we were selected among the many applications. So then after you selected, it's a little time later that then they ask for Part B, because in the application, you basically list, these are the different possible locations. So they give you some time once you're selected to then fill out this information. So with the Part B, which is also called the equipment plan, you list the radio contact coordinator, site information, so they want you to designate a site. So with us, we actually looked at several different places in the Cleveland area before we finalized on Camp Timberlane, which is in Wakeman, Ohio, which is where we had the event. So as a result, we had to get latitude, longitude, elevation information, the call sign we were using at the site, which was the club call, and then station and equipment data for radio station 1 and 2. ARISS requires you to have 2 independent stations on using 2 independent power sources. Basically a duplicate station. And here's the reason. Remember this is only a 10-minute contact. You don't want at the start of the contact for the rotor to stop working on the antenna, or to get a power failure, or the computer not to work. Because then you're going to have all these students and the press and the parents and everyone looking at you wondering why are they not hearing anything. So they want a duplicate, station. And then at the end, everyone has a post-contact report. So with regards to the planning, the NASA Glenn Amateur Radio Club, we led the technical planning and execution of the contact. The SCAN organization, they took the lead in planning and organizing the overall event. So they collaborated with folks at the Imaging Technology Office, at Glenn Exhibits, and they also used the Best Buy Geek Squad. I believe one of the folks knew someone there. So they're the ones who did a lot of the photos, videos. They did live stream of the audio, video. They provided a microscope, microphones, and screens for us to view the event. They also had weekly meetings to plan the logistics. Together, they and us actually coordinated the site visits, and they actually had exhibits for the and activities for the day of the event spread out, and I'll show you a picture of what it looks like. And they also coordinated volunteers to support the exhibits and activities. And one of the things that they found out, which I also had mentioned, is the uncertainty on the final date and time does affect the large event planning. They wanted something a lot bigger, which they were scaled down. As I mentioned, we applied for the application in June of 2016. A couple of months later, we were selected. January of 2017, we were told, we have a week for your contact. It'll be the last week of June. I think it was between June 21st and 25th. So, but they could not tell us which day, and they could not tell us what time. So you're trying to organize things, and it's like, okay, you need that whole week blocked off. And then the week before is when we were told, oh, it's going to be Friday, June 25th. And then 2 days later, we got an email, oh, we may need to move it to Wednesday. The next day, oh no, you guys are set for Friday. So, and one of the things that affects that, I know with one of our previous contacts, they actually changed the date to us because the shuttle had docked with station, boosted the station up, so then all of the orbit ephemeris data changed. So then they had to coordinate that. So those are the type of things that affects the contact. Here's some pictures. Oops, that's right. And I think everyone may recognize this guy here. So one of the exhibits and activities we had that day with the Girl Scouts till we're waiting for contact is here. Dave here had basically a Morse code key and the phonetic alphabet where the girls can actually try to type their name. We had another exhibit here with build your own tracking and data satellite system. And here's a view of the campsite. This Girl Scouts camp actually has a telescope. There's a cabin here, but we were staged outside and we had tents. And you'll see a little bit later, it basically was cloudy that whole day, but we were lucky and glad that we were able to get the contact going. With regards to the equipment gathering and dry run, as I mentioned, we use a variety of means to get the primary and backup station. We use club equipment. We use equipment we had in the shack from past contacts. We also got some equipment from club members. After we submitted our initial equipment plan, our ARISS mentor actually provided some recommendation regarding our antenna setup and suggested we use some high gain antennas. So this is where having an organization that had funding helped out. They actually, we were able to procure 2 high gain antennas and 2 preamps for our primary and backup stations instead of what we had. And we also did a dry run on the site with all the equipment about, I think, 2 weeks beforehand to make sure everything was working. Here's a picture of the antenna setup at the camp, and since, like I said, we had people walking all around, we just had it staked off there. And then I'm going to talk about what Girl Scout of Northeast Ohio did as an organization, and I'm also going to mention what a school does. So with Girl Scouts of Northeast Ohio, they initially selected 16 girls from among the different Girl Scout levels to ask the question. The week before, we got an email from the mentor saying, hey, if you can do it, ask more questions. Because this particular astronaut, he was actually very good at answering the questions. By the way, the astronauts are given the questions ahead of time, so they know what's there. But he was actually very good at answering, so they said a lot of times they'd get through all their questions, and he goes, oh, you got anything else for me? And they're like, so they'll just come up with something. So we actually had 22 girls, and all of them were able to ask questions. The girls were selected based on the questions submitted. GSNEO and myself and Scan looked through the questions. And then the girls' family and troops were invited. Something else, and then throughout the year, GSNEO had different things they were doing to promote the ARISS contact. Each month, they had another aspect of it. And then during the summer, they had a week-long space camp to promote it. But again, since they didn't know what the exact time was, they did the space camp the week before. And one of the things I provided them was information on the ARRL radio and wireless technology patch. So they didn't actually earn the whole patch, but they did enough activities on it. And we also provide them some Morse code activity to incorporate. And then just like we did, they also promoted this event using their mailing list, press release, and a whole bunch of other events. Now, with regards to some of the schools the club has been involved with, here's an example of the different ways the schools are able to incorporate this. And basically, any curricula you can think of, there's a way to show the space station and the ARISS contacts and its applicability. From the history standpoint, you can get into a discussion of the space program from Mercury to ISS, the space race, and the different things we do. Geography, and then you can get into remote sensing with the older students with regards to images taken from Earth, images taken of the Earth from the space station and how it differs from what you see. Math, science, you can get into the orbits, microgravity concepts, or even experiments that they do. Languages, just think when you have an international crew speaking the different languages, you can have the students try to figure out different words in different language for what the astronauts do. Technology is an easy one. That gets into ham radio, communication methods. Humanities and English, students can write articles or stories about what's happening on the station, or just explain why they selected the questions they did. And then art, a lot of times they did that with the younger grades, K through 2. Make a drawing about NASA, what you think it's like to be an astronaut or any space-related activity. So with these different activities, you can actually get from K through high school, all the students involved, and tailor this based on the student's background. And then they also promote this with their community, school district, and with the media. So here we are waiting for our first contact, and yes, it basically rained the whole day. Luckily, there wasn't any thunderstorms, because sadly there have been a couple of contacts where if there were storms, they had to cancel. But the girls, they were there waiting and preparing for the first contact. And here is myself, and they had the first young lady was a Daisy, kindergarten, asking me the first contact. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play for you the first 3 questions. The first one is actually a tearjerker if you listen to it. And the third question I think you guys will all really appreciate. I actually have on the site the entire audio file. I'm not going to play the whole 10 minutes of it because we'll really be behind. But like I said, I'll play the first 3. That's me. So basically, but yeah, so basically, like I said, they were able to get through all the questions. And here's another picture of the video screen that was put up, and then the girls just waiting their turn for the ARISS contact. And then here's a group shot of everyone after the contact. Like I said, all the girls were able to ask. This gentleman here is Frank Bauer. He's actually the chair for the ARISS program. And it was kind of neat. He actually came to our site to see it. And then we have the girls, the hams here, and then we have some of the other folks from the SCAN network who actually supported us. And then a treat that the girls got, and this is not something you typically do with the ARISS contact, is they actually got to meet astronaut Jack Fisher. Because they work at NASA, one of the things that happens is 6 months after an astronaut returns to Earth, they visit the various NASA centers and basically are giving a debrief to the employees and then just talking to the folks, different experiments they operated. So I was able to get a session with Jack Fisher and the girls, and they were able to ask them questions, which is, like I said, real neat. And I think we got all but 2 of the girls to actually meet him. And then this just kind of summarized some of the previous contacts we did. The Ham Club did one in January 2006 with St. Albert the Great School. It was actually held at St. Albert the Great Church. I don't know if anyone's ever been there. The church holds about 1,500 people, and we almost had it to capacity. with 800 students, 400 faculty, and others. The contact was actually initiated by a ham who became a silent key in 2003. Sadly, he didn't live to see the contact, but the club decided to do it. At that time, there was about a 2-3 year wait period before we could make contact with the station astronauts. Now, my understanding is all the station astronauts are actually provided a ham, are given a test and get their ham license. Some are more active than others, but they go fairly quickly because we put our application in June, and then within a year we were able to contact. Cleveland Heights High School, and I think I met somebody here. We made a contact with them 3 months later. Again, it's just how the schedule turned out. They actually had 3 other schools involved, a middle school and a Catholic school, and they had a ham station in there at the school. So this contact was a little different than the others. We actually made the contact in the ham station, and then they had a video link up from the ham class to their auditorium. So all the students were in the auditorium watching it while we were in the ham station. And they were able to get 22 or 25 questions during the 10-minute pass. And then the next year, we helped university schools make a contact. And this was also done in the auditorium. This was neat because they actually put the antennas on the roof of their building. And this one was a 9-minute pass, and 12 students were able to ask questions. This last page, I just want to acknowledge, like I said, there's just so many people who helped out throughout this event. And I know I probably missed someone, but like I said, just wanted to list all the different folks who helped out to make this successful. I know it was an event, and I think Dave mentioned it, that everyone basically enjoyed it, and just the anticipation, waiting for that contact, and as hams, okay, did I connect everything right? Am I going to hear him? And then all the eyes just basically sitting there waiting and watching you to do that. So, any questions? Thank you.
So I see that several of these were many years ago. Mm-hmm. So what have you seen as a result of the girls being able to talk to the astronauts? Have you seen like careers in STEM or a change in direction of their professional life? Or
I haven't seen anything from their standpoint because, like I said, it's only been a couple of years. But I have been involved in other programs. One of the things I do at NASA is I always bring in students to work with me during the summer. In fact, I was just reviewing applications. So I always have high school and college students, and they keep in contact. And it's neat how, especially the ones who are undecided, come and work at NASA, or something like this inspires them to do an area they hadn't thought of. So it does, like I said, inspire students.
Nancy, has there ever been an ARISS contact with a makerspace?
I don't know if it's been with a makerspace. Like I said, the application form is there online, and as long as you're an organization, I mean, they emphasize the educational aspect. I know they've had them at like the Boy Scout Jamboree. They've also had them at conferences. There's no reason why they can't do a makerspace one.